There are three types of lasso selection tools you may want to try to use. There's the regular lasso tool, which works kind of like a pen or pencil. You just hold it down and you trace the object you're trying to select. The polygonal lasso tool works by creating straight lines, and you just click and connect, making straight lines. And the magnetic one, kind of works like the lasso tool where you're trying to draw and trace an object, but it has a sort of magnetic feature where it tries to find the edge of the object itself. So I'm going to start out with an example of just using the lasso tool. I'm going to click and holding my mouse down, try to make a selection of this butterfly here. I'm actually not even using the mouse, I'm using a tracking pad, so there's just kind of no way I can make any sort of decent selection. Just to kind of show you how this works. So I click, and I have to bring it back to the ending point. At these selections, all the lasso selections have to be closed selections, meaning your end has to reach your beginning. And so now I've made that selection. I want to copy and paste it and put it onto its own layer. I could use two keyboard shortcuts, Control-C to copy, Control-V as in Victor to paste, but in Photoshop I could also do that with one keyboard shortcut, which is Control-J as in Jack. And I now see in my layers panel, I have a new layer. I don't see my butterfly because it pasted on top of itself. So I'm going to take the Move tool and move it up. And there it is. Now I want to go and get another selection of it, so it's important that I make sure I go in my layers panel and I click on the background layer, because that's the layer I want to be on. And this time I'll use the polygonal. And this one is going to work by click, and as you see, I'm dragging out here, I have a straight line. So I can kind of trace this, making all these straight edges. And I'm just going to go and do a very fast selection here, just kind of showing you, I'm not trying to make a good selection, but just showing you a little bit how this tool works. This would be good if I wanted to trace the building that's at the top of this image. This is probably the tool that I want to use. And I'm going to click once I get back to the beginning and Control-J to move it onto its own layer. And now I can continue with my keyboard shortcuts and use V to get the Move tool and move it out. But now I want to go get this moth, and I need to make sure I'm on my background layer. So I need to go to my layers panel and switch and get the moth. So besides trying to show you these three selection tools, I'm also really just trying to point out a little bit more about layers and to make sure that you're always conscious of which layer you're working on. Because a typical mistake when you're starting out, or even if you've been working with Photoshop for 20 years, is that you go to make a selection on a layer that doesn't actually have the contents that you think you have. So in other words, if I'm on layer 2, I try to make a selection of this butterfly, and I'm going to do something quick, and I'm going to get a warning message that says, could not make a new layer from the selection because the selected area is empty. Why would it say that? It looks like I got the moth, but if we look at layer 2, and I turn off the visibility, click OK, of the background in layer 1, you can see why Photoshop said that. I was trying to select something that wasn't there. So I actually meant to be on my background. So if that happens, I don't have to start my selection over. I can just switch, my selection stays there, and switch my layers. I'm now on the background. And so now when I do Control-J, I've copied out that rather poorly done selection of the moth. So if I try to make a slightly better selection here with that magnetic tool, I'll show you how it works. I can kind of click, and if I drag my mouse out, notice I have this little selection that's following me. So I'm kind of clicking and dragging along the edges. And it's a combo between where I click and where Photoshop tries to use its magnetic wand or magnetic selection tool to go in and make the selection. One thing that I've seen happen is that you move your mouse out, someone moves their mouse out, and you don't know how to stop the selection, right? You're going to end up into this, and sometimes your screen even turns white. How do I stop the selection? So if this happens to you, remember all these selection tools have to be closed. So what you want to do is double click, it closes your selection, and then you can do Control-D to deselect and get rid of your selection tool. Okay, so that selection tool just kind of works by clicking and dragging and moving along. I'll just give you a little bit of a heads up. It seems like a tempting tool, but it often can be a tool that drives you a little bit crazy. So only use it on an image that has a really clearly defined edge against its background. And I've talking a little bit about layer order. One thing I wanted to point out, let's say I have these moths now on and butterflies on different layers. And if you noticed, I was able to simply just grab this one and click and move it, and grab this one and click and move it. Now, how did that happen? Because normally what you have to do is, I have another one here, is first select your correct layer, then click and drag it, and go to the next layer and click and drag it. Well, I want to point out that when you're with the Move tool, if you go up to your options bar and you click on Auto Select, you don't have to worry about selecting the correct layer first. Photoshop will do it for you. I'm going to turn Auto Select off. If I want to move this moth, I'm not able to do it until I switch to layer 2, because that moth's on layer 2. Now I want to move this one. Oh, I just try to do it. It doesn't happen. I have to switch to layer 3 to get it to move. Okay, so auto select with the Move tool can be really, really useful to be able to move your butterflies or whatever it is that you're copying around. And the last thing is just to point out about that layer order, something I had talked about. I talk about in another video. So if I want to have the red one, the moth, on top, I need to make sure in my layers panel that that is the layer that is on top, and that's going to make that one appear above the other ones. Okay, and then I'm going to move on to the next video.